most of us live life in a binary consciousness. I can do this or I can do that. I can lose my cool or I can not say anything about it, just shut my mouth about it. There's many possibilities between shutting up and opening your mouth, right? There's a lot of possibilities in those two things. And emotional sobriety is living in those possibilities.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. I'm Tom Rutledge, and with me is Dr. Alan Berger. I hesitated, but I do know who you are, Dr. Alan Berger, and our wonderful producer, Patrick Newman. Hi, guys.
Howdy.
I was thinking of a new name for our show.
What is it?
Sobriety Matters.
Say it again.
Emotional sobriety matters. Matters to us. We're finding it matters to a lot of people. You know, on Thursday night, we've got a wonderful community that's started that people are finding a lot of value.
Oh, it has a double meaning.
Yeah.
It took me a minute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, listen, it's daylight savings time, so we'll give you a while to catch up.
Yeah. It turns out I only
we fell behind, didn't we?
I only fell back 45 minutes, though. It's like you're supposed to fall back an hour, I think.
That's right.
I'm excited though. I think I misdirected us a little bit, but in a wonderful way. Last episode when we were talking about chapter 9 of your book, and I had just been in the midst of rereading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and so we all three just became involved in our love for that book, those lessons.
Not a misdirection at all. You're developing an emotional sobriety library out there. Definitely one of the books to include in your library. There is no question it has its place in that library.
It's so congruent with what we're doing. It's like, it's just a good example. And, I learned this a long time ago that, there aren't really any original ideas, and what we do is what life is we learn lessons and then we forget them and then we get reminded. And I like to think that that's what support system is. It's like you don't have to have a great memory when it comes to recovery. You just have to have a support system where and like we've referred to each other as each other's Post-it notes before. It's like and there's I remember telling a friend of mine that I trusted very much before I wrote my first book. I'd been to a self-help section of a bookstore, remember bookstores, and overwhelmed by all the books there. And I said to her, I said, I don't have anything original to say. And she said, that hadn't been said before. And she said, well, of course you don't. Which I thought, well, that seems rude, but then she went on to say, but people are waiting to hear it the way you're going to say it, and we all think about that in terms of there's so many different people. We each, we'll have our little Venn diagrams will intersect with some that we all have in common, but each of us has our own. We found our own way, and we really do encourage all of you listening to search. It's not just we're not here ever to claim we have all the answers. We're fellow searchers. What answers we think we have, we'll be glad to share with you. And then if we decide that we made a mistake about that, we'll be glad to acknowledge that too. But don't, be adventurous.
Very much so. And look, and that goes to this other point is that keep searching until you find a voice that speaks to you.
Yeah.
Because, what Tom is saying, I agree with in large part is that There's a lot of us are saying things that others have said, but we may be saying it in a way that you can hear it, which is different. And that's the important thing is to pay attention to, if the message is not coming in one way, don't say it's the wrong message. It just might be the way the message is coming to you doesn't resonate with you. I mean, I've had that experience before with certain things, but one of the things that Patrick said after the last show is that how can we bring this back to a more practical matter?
Yeah.
In terms of what does that mean to live life on life's terms? And, what was it you said, Patrick? Is it a matter of adaptation?
Right. Is emotional sobriety at the heart of it just about when confronted with, an inflexible circumstance, is it just about the degree to which you become flexible in reaction to it?
Well, I think the answer to that is yes, but it's not as simple as that sounds, because
yes, it's yes without the word just in there. It's not. Yes. It's not just that. It's like it's that and much more.
It's that. See, one of the things I think one of the things I did well in this book was to talk about, like we're doing kind of it. It's interesting. There is a parallel to what we're doing on the Thursday night thing, is talking about emotional sobriety in terms of what has to build up. How do we build a certain foundation for emotional sobriety? And one of the things that I think is so important here is that we don't just get to life on life's terms without first going through all those other chapters, right? Which is like, first of all, seeing that we're asleep, right? Starting to wake ourselves up, see our emotional dependency, see the way that we get in the way with dealing with life on life's terms. See, all of that stuff becomes so important, Patrick, in terms of so that when an event happens, I don't get hung up with objecting to it. And see, it's the objection to it that then sends my energy off in the wrong direction. Instead of my energy being used to cope with what's going on, now I'm into throwing a pity party. I'm objecting to it. I'm getting mad at the situation. I'm trying to find somebody to blame. I mean, all this energy is going in all the wrong direction, right? Because it's not going into, okay, now what do I do with this? What's the best relationship to have to this experience that's going on in my life? I can't even get to that question when all this other stuff is going on. So the first thing is that we got to make sure, Herb Kagan calls it being a clear channel. Clearing the channel, right? I've got to clear the channel so that when life is happening to me on as it will, I mean,
on its own terms. That's right.
Right. What was that bumper sticker? Shit happens. Well, life happens. It's just life happens. It's not even shit. It's shit. You don't know what to do with it, but life happens. Right. See, that's the blaming again. The guy that wrote "Shit Happens" needs emotional sobriety, Patrick.
I also like Change Calls the Tune We Dance To. I always like that.
Oh, I've never heard that. I love that.
Say that again. I didn't get my head wrapped around it.
Change calls the tune we dance to.
Aha. Yes. Very well said.
Makes me want to dance.
Very well said. And see, and that's the issue, because if I don't like the tune, what am I going to do? Try to change channels, try to tune into a different station, or get mad at the tune that's going on and say, I don't like this tune. I'm not going to dance to this one.
Well, and the other thing that, when you started off with there, Alan, I think is so important is, and I think it's thematic through all of this. And that is, the initial awareness and acceptance on the front end of all change. If that has to be, and that has to be of the situation, like you're saying, the cards that are dealt, the tune that life is playing, but the other thing that I thought of as you were saying that is how often, and specifically people who are I think tend to be seekers and are looking as we have personally, and for what we do professionally, people are looking for tend to be too quick to judge themselves in terms of, I would just say, for lack of a better way of saying it, sort of making whatever they're experiencing of themselves pathology. I'm sick. It's still judgment. It's still so I'm not saying don't get good diagnoses, but I'm going. It's like the toughest part is when the person stops drinking. What we know about that person is they would love for their life to change immediately. If they see something in us, if we're having a conversation and they see something in us that they want it now. And what we know is they can't have it now. And it's like, and what we know is what they have to be able to do first, because we've all done it, is you got to do the part where you are just aware of how badly you feel, how much you want this, and how you feel about it not being an instant cure, and all of that stuff. And the idea is I want people to know, and we do this on the Thursday night group very often. We've done it a couple of times specifically to really want to say, we want you to be proud of yourself when you first, we've had some people share who were just starting out, and go like, when we hear that pain, we brighten up, but not because we like their pain, but we go like, no, you're on the right path. And I want you to be able to, I don't want you to have to wait until life starts to feel like it goes your way before you can feel good. I want you to be able to feel good while you're feeling bad. It's like, I want you to feel good about yourself while it may not be fun, but your integrity, your self-respect can begin to heal in that very moment. That I can sit here and feel like miserable. I can sit here and have so many questions and almost no answers. And I'm hearing from people that I'm choosing to listen to and trust, that I'm doing something that is courageous and it is moving me in the right direction. It's so important for us to try to rush past that. We've all done it. It's like we make mistakes, too many mistakes.
Yep. So let's go back to the practical, right? Mm-hmm. As you were saying, Patrick. So let me give you an example of a client I worked with this week and what happened for him. So two things, but we'll start with the most recent, because that's fresh on my mind. So he dropped his car off to get some work done on it. I forgot whether the transmission, that part's not really relevant, but they needed it a few days to get the work done. So it kind of stayed there for 2 or 3 days in the lot. So, it's an older vehicle. It's not brand new. It's maybe got 15, 20 years on it. So he goes to pick it up and there's a bump in the fender that wasn't there before. All right. So life happens, right? Mm-hmm. Mistakes happen. Somebody probably bumped the vehicle when it was in the lot. Mm-hmm. So, he says to the guy, hey, there seems to be something wrong with my bumper. I think he picked it up after hours. The guy said, so call back Monday when the manager is. So he calls back Monday when the manager's in, and he starts to talk to the manager about it. And the manager starts to deflect responsibility. Mm-hmm. Now, I am not clear because I know this guy, and he doesn't just talk to people without skewering them. Let me put it to you this way. So I'm not totally certain the manager started defensively or deflectively. He might have been in reaction to how this guy was coming on to him.
After the first couple of shots were fired. Yeah,
right. But, he told me, I think I was keeping my cool. I said, okay, well, you're cool. And the guy was not picking up any responsibility and willing to take any responsibility. How did I know it was on my lot? I mean, you drove it home. He's saying things like, maybe you did it and you're trying to blame it on us. And the guy said, now it's my integrity that's being questioned. So you can see the escalation is just. And so by time the conversation was over, he's in a screaming match with this guy and saying things to this guy that he doesn't even feel good about when he hangs up. He lost his cool completely.
Yeah, because one of the things I hear when you're saying is that this was a part of his process because regardless of what else? I always tell everybody, everything's information. It's like, learning, you can learn to drive a car in a parking lot, but this is driving in interstate traffic. It's like, you gotta be able to you can't just keep your cool, when everything's okay. But I love the idea that he lets you know too, in telling the story, his intention was to keep us cool. He was evaluating that as it went. He thought it was going well.
Really trying.
And he actually, and the other thing is, it's a little bit like what I was saying before is, it's a positive thing if at the end of that you have made some mistakes and you've messed up and you haven't been able to achieve your goal with yourself. It's good that you can feel that and know it. Yes. It's not, that's more important than the fact that you screwed something up. Yeah. I love that so far. Anyway, go ahead. I love the story already.
So then, he hangs up the phone and cools down for a while, decides to call back and speak to the owner. Not just the general manager, but the owner, and tells the owner what happened. The owner says, look, the owner's got a cool head about it and good customer service relations. Says, look, we'll figure this out. And he says, we'll take care of it. He says, how much damage was done? The guy says, maybe 100, or let me get an estimate. And he says, all right, we'll get it taken care of. So the owner was just saying, hey, no big thing. Oh, that's right. Because this guy also threatened, I'm going to write this up in Yelp. And, so he escalated it way up. So he finally, I think it's going to get taken care of and the owner's going to do it. Now, what happened? How come, even though his intention was when he called to keep his cool, what happened? And what he says, well, how could I keep my cool when this other guy wasn't taking any responsibility? So herein lies a problem. If my keeping my cool depends on what the other person's doing, then what happens? I've lost my autonomy.
I was going to say his answer is embedded in his question.
He had a lot of other options that he couldn't see, right?
Right.
So the options he couldn't see was he could have empathized with the guy for a minute. He was asking the guy to empathize with him, and he could have taken a minute and say, God, I can see it's hard for you to wrap your head around that. Maybe this happened on your watch. Are you concerned that, the owner of the company is going to be upset with you? If you guys made a mistake out there? I don't think it's that big of a. He could have tried to help the guy deal with whatever was going on that was making it hard for the guy. That's one example. There's a lot of other, what I usually say is that, and Tom and I talk about this a lot, most of us live life in a binary consciousness. I can do this or I can do that. I can lose my cool or I can not say anything about it, just shut my mouth about it. Right. So see, that becomes the two choices. I shut my mouth about it, then I don't feel good about it. I open my mouth about it, then I don't feel good about it.
Yes. Keeping your cool does not just mean, we've all had experiences of successfully stuffing things down into our left knee, until it later blows up. But it's like, it's like, that's not what we're talking about.
Not what we're talking
at all.
See, we're talking about there's many possibilities between shutting up and opening your mouth, right? There's a lot of possibilities in those two things. And emotional sobriety is living in those possibilities. Is first of all, having an awareness that those possibilities exist, and then finding a way to start to experiment with those possibilities. Hey, let me try this. Let me try that. And I said this to him. I said, one of the themes that keeps coming up for you is you want people to be respectful of your position, but you show no willingness to be respectful of the people you're dealing with. He just had an incident with a person in a hotel, and they have strict policy. You have to wear your mask in the hotel. He goes up to the desk without a mask on. And she says, sir, could you put your mask on? And he says, listen, this will just take a minute. She goes, I know it'll take a minute, but I need you to have your mask on. That's our policy in the hotel is we don't provide services without people wearing their mask. And he went irate on her. He went off on her. You must have voted for Biden. And he started to do all of these things of now attacking her when this gal's just trying to do her job. All she's trying to do is to enforce the policy that
Mhm.
the hotel set, a policy I tend to agree with. I think we all need to protect each other from this crazy virus that's killed how many millions of people now? I mean, the number is growing and growing all the time. We got a pandemic on our hands. But see, that's what happens in this stuff is sometimes we don't see that what makes it hard to adapt, to dance to the song that life is playing, as you so wonderfully described, Patrick, is that all of these ideas about how things should be. I should get the respect. People should respect me. How can they do this to me? It's not fair. They're not doing their job. They're supposed to do their job. So you see what happens is we get hung up in all these unenforceable rules. It makes it very hard to deal with things as they are. So that's why we spent a lot of time getting up to this point in that book about clearing the channel, paying attention to these things that make it hard. Now, I'll give you a small victory I had one time so I can contrast the difference. So I was speaking at a conference for men called It Never Happens. It Never Happens to Boys, right? And it was about sexual abuse in men, and specifically, boys, right? And it was at a hotel in downtown Pasadena. And there's limited parking in these areas and stuff like that. So when you pull into the hotel, you turn your car into valet and they take it in the garage below and park it, right? There's no self-parking at the hotel. It's all valet. I lease my cars and I had a Lexus ES300, 3 days old. Beautiful car. Had that beautiful silver finish on it, metallic silver finish on it. I mean, smell a new car and everything.
I can tell where this is going.
Hand my keys over to the valet.
I can just tell how much you love that car.
I love the car. It's a great car. Hand my keys over to the valet guy, go up to my room, get my bags taken up there. I'm unpacking, and all of a sudden a call comes in. Dr. Berger. Yes, this is Dr. Berger. Well, we got some bad news. I go, what happened? Is everything okay? He says, well, yeah, nobody got hurt, but your car got hurt. Is the attendant that was parking your car misjudged this pole that he was turning right on, and he scraped the whole right side of your car. I go, oh, how bad is it? Well, I don't think the door will open on the passenger side. So it was pretty bad. I go, okay, well, let me come down and take a look at it. Come down, take a look at it. Yeah, the whole side of the car is all messed up. I said, okay, what are we going to do about it? Guy looks at me. What do you mean? I said, well, what are we going to do about it? It's just, yeah, it happens. These things, people make mistakes. I've made mistakes. So just tell me what the procedure is that we have to follow. Well, we have to file this claim. I said, okay, great. Listen, I just have one request. He goes, what is that? Hey, please don't fire the guy that did this. Everybody makes mistakes. It's no big deal. We can get this. It's a car. It can be fixed. It's a thing. It's not a big deal. I'm just concerned about, I'm sure the guy feels bad enough about himself. It doesn't need to be made worse than that. So, is that okay? He says, oh, well, thank you for your attitude. I mean, most people are screaming about having the guy fired and what kind of employees do you have? And I said, yeah, well, I'm hopefully past that today. And I'm not saying that. I appreciate you guys, just understand he made a mistake. He probably feels like shit about it. It's a car. We can get it fixed. So that night, I'm back up in the room after I do my presentation and stuff. I get a call from the owner of the valet service. And he says, I just had to give you a call, Dr. Berger. Why is that? He says, I've been doing this for over 35 years. Not once in 35 years has anybody ever reacted the way you just reacted. And I just called to talk to you about that and to say thank you. Is you didn't make anybody feel bad about themselves. You didn't blame anybody. You didn't get into throwing a fit about this thing. You were very matter of fact about it. And, and look, our policy is usually to get the car taken to one of our shops, but because of your attitude, we'd like to accommodate you. So where do you live? And let's find a body shop close to you so it's not a hassle for you, or more of a hassle than it's going to be.
Right.
I said, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I said, listen, man, I'm in recovery and I'm trying to learn this thing called emotional sobriety. And I got to talk to him about what that means and stuff like that. And it's about like dealing with life on life's terms. At the end of it, I walked away feeling, even though something terribly happened to this car, I was glad it happened. I was glad somebody could see what this is like. I'm glad somebody could experience somebody handling a situation different. It's like Herb Kagan says, this one Catholic saint, and I'm not saying I've reached sainthood, but it's this time this thing worked for me. His Catholic saint says, everywhere you go, preach the gospel. And he says, and sometimes use words. Everywhere you go, preach the gospel. Right. Sometimes use words. So,
you may need to use words sometimes. Huh?
Here's a principle of attraction, not promotion. This guy got to see something different than what he had ever seen before in his career of somebody handling something. And at the end of that, it totally reinforced this whole thing for me, not because of the way they responded, but because how I felt about myself, Patrick.
Right.
I was being the Alan that I enjoy being.
It's the best way to neutralize the pain you must have felt at seeing your car damaged, right? It's
I guess it wasn't that painful. I'm not that into things as much, man. I think people are more important.
Me neither. Yeah.
I don't get hung up. I mean, it was too bad and I didn't want it a hassle. But look, it can be fixed. And it did get fixed in the body shop we went to. They did a great job. It's in Torrance. They were wonderful. But look, to me, this is life on life's terms. Do I handle every situation like that? My wife wishes I did. She's hearing this podcast. She says, that was only the man that I was married to.
That's right. She raises her hand. I have a couple of questions.
So sometimes I can deal with her that way. Sometimes I can't. It just depends on a lot of things. Is how much is the arthritis hurting in my right hip? And, but
it does. It's all those details. What's my attitude with that today? Am I aware that I'm grumpy because of my right hip, as opposed to, I'm buying into just the idea that, people are irritating me. But the other, I love this story, but also I want to be the Scrooge on the other end of it and be sure to point out that, and my experience with doing this is it's one of the most fun things about doing this is because I love surprising people. And you cannot surprise people but more in situations like that, where like a guy almost backed up into a parking lot to me and was going to butt my car. I honked my horn. The sun was in everybody's eyes. It's like, he stopped on a dime, pulled in a parking place. I got out of my car and walked over to his car. So I can see his face. He thinks I'm coming to fight. It's like, and I just said, I've never seen anybody's reflexes better than that. That's amazing how fast you stop. Part of that's because it makes me feel better about myself. Part of it's I'm just fucking entertaining myself because it's kind of fun to step out, and do stuff that people don't, and maybe that benefits people. I hope it does. But it's like, I do it for my own entertainment. I do it. But the other piece I want people to know that you could have done exactly what you did in that story, and they could have fired the guy. Everything could have gone right. Yeah. And what we want people who are listening to this knowing that none of that would be the measure. It's you and you at the end of the day. Your integrity is in shape. I'm glad I did that. If you would probably never know if something bad did happen, but if you did, you would go like that doesn't take anything away from me.
30 years ago, that side of me that wants to be righteous and nail everybody for their mistakes would have come out. Said, look at what you did. How could you guys do this? Now you created all these hassles in my life and I got to deal with that. Get fucking better employees or, whatever. I would have been that guy. I know.
And see, part of your success and part of your celebration really is that little time travel comparison I love that when I help that with my clients a lot. It's like the idea of like, I mean, how would you imagine you would do this? I don't care, a month ago or 3 years ago or 6 years ago. It's like, it's really good just to watch and see that contrast, because that's how you mark your own progress, to be able to see, this is amazing. And it makes this for me. And I bet this is the same thing. It's like, I still have that experience when I do something better than I have done in the past. And I have a positive response from it. And that kind of stuff is I love that feeling that comes with, hey man, this shit really works.
Yeah. Well, and look, and what it also said to me is that tyrant I had that would beat me up for making mistakes wasn't as strong now.
He wasn't in charge. He's not driving. That's a nice car, but he wasn't driving.
Before he would have been in charge, because when I made a mistake, I hated myself for. We talked about that on Thursday night. The self-hating process. That self-hating process says I shouldn't make mistakes, and it also says you shouldn't make mistakes. So it's not only do I should on myself, but I'll should on you with that thing, right? So it's that same thing. And once I see that, I do make mistakes, and the best thing I can do is learn from them. The biggest mistake is not learning from our mistakes.
That's right.
I mean, that's what we say over and over and over again. In one way of thinking about emotional sobriety, it's to clear the channel so you can learn from your mistakes. We grow up, and Fritz Perls said this so well: if I let the situation I'm in control me. Once again, it's that if I dance to the music that is being played, to the tune that life is playing, I learn how to deal with life and to cope with life as it is. I start growing up.
Yep.
That's the bottom line here. So this whole issue about life on life terms is the tangible evidence of where you're at with your emotional sobriety. So if you want a measure of where things are at, look at how you're dealing with situations that don't go the way that you think they should go. Look at situations that where somebody makes a mistake and how you deal with that. How do you show up for that situation? That's going to give you a sense of where you're at in terms of this emotional sobriety in your recovery.
And as always, we want to say, and if you're coming up short with that, and you're not finding the possibilities that Alan always talks about, anywhere within your reach, that's when you reach out and get extra support. That's when you reach out and ask for some help, because there's, that's because earlier what you said about a big part of emotional sobriety is knowing that there are other possibilities. It's not the binary choice. It's like, knowing that there are other possibilities doesn't mean I know where they are or what they are. It just means I learned to believe in them. And it's like, and I absolutely can believe that if I'm coming up blank, I can call one of you guys, and it still may come from me, but from that conversation from one of us, something else will come out. It's like, it's because I like, go back to the story you told about your client losing it with the guy. Sometimes the best thing we can learn to do is just hit the pause button and just realize I recognize the warning signs. The red flags are here. I'm getting ready to drop back into some old behavior I don't want to see. So let me just say, hey, let me call. I got some things I got to get done. Let me call you back later. It can make all the difference in the world. I can testify.
That's right on. Right.
Yeah. I acted out in a capacity similar to this client of yours recently when I was in a time-sensitive situation, and my girlfriend was not responding to the schedule in the way I wanted her to, and then her cats were not responding to the schedule in the way I wanted them to. And the cats are a perfect avatar for her, because cats are completely uninterested in doing anything on time or on a time that makes sense to human beings. And I think that had I slowed down and maybe peeled myself away from that binary framework, I would have been able to, just rather than demanding that they bend to my conception of things, maybe I could have bent myself, and the outcome would have been a lot less messy. I think that in my recovery, I have a rigidity in my recovery that probably just comes from me I equate chaos with just everything that my life rested on when I was still using. And I think like, I've become like a super neat freak around the house. And, I've just been very, just very book focused, not AA book, but just life book. I've just been book focused, clock focused, and inflexible. Yeah. And I think that that's a recipe for, it can be a recipe for a very emotionally unsober way of moving through life.
Well, I'll give you a prophecy that 6 years into my recovery from alcoholism, I came home and found my wife a book my wife was reading on the coffee table called How to Live with a Control Freak. It's like, what did I do? I got pissed off. It's like,
figures, right?
That's right. How dare you, right? But
at least he wasn't reading a book that my sponsor Tom's first wife was reading. What? He comes home and she was reading Codependent No More, and before he knew it, he was no more.
He was no more. That's good, but it's that thing, Patrick, too, though, because you can recover from chaos within yourself. I think you can separate. I don't know if you can change. There's chaos inside of us, but the idea we can learn how not to be so attached to the chaos. It's like, but definitely don't imagine that you can. And you may not need this, but I'll just say it to anybody who's listening. You don't imagine that your recovery is going to have an impact on the chaos in the world. It's like, that's not, we don't, the levers we're pulling thinking that we're going to control the rest of the world and its chaotic nature is like, those things are not connected to anything. We're just.
Well, and this also reminds me, Patrick, is that sometimes we lose sight of what's the most important thing. And that's what these rules can do. Mm-hmm. I was working with this one dad once, and he would come home. He had 2 small children, and they had their toy chest out in the backyard. They lived in Manhattan Beach, and he'd come home at 5 or 5:30 whenever he got there, and he'd walk through the backyard, and there'd be toys everywhere, and he would be so pissed off, and he'd start screaming, "Can't you guys pick these toys up when you're done with them?" And and here they're glad to see Dad, and now Dad's yelling at them and making them feel like they're doing something wrong because they're enjoying their life, right? Mm-hmm. And his wife was besides herself. She didn't know what to say to him and tried to talk to him, and he would turn it on her. Look, you're obviously not doing your job with these kids, or else those toys would be picked up and stuff like that. And I'm not afraid to challenge someone. And I said, wow, you've got a real strong rule about this whole thing. Mm-hmm. I said, but I think you're missing something. He goes, what do you mean? I think you're missing something. He wants to fight with me, right? Mm-hmm. I said, no, I think you're missing something. What do you think I'm missing? He goes, I think you're missing that your kids are having so much fun with all those toys. Mm-hmm. And you're making them being put away more important than the enjoyment your kids are having and living their life and having those toys available to them to play with. And I said, could you imagine, God forbid, something happened to your kids and you walked in that backyard and it was clean and those toys weren't there? I said, you'd wish that those toys were spread all over the yard because they're evidence that your kids are happy and enjoying their life and the life that you've helped create.
Yep.
His wife started crying.
It's a beautiful and relevant reframe that we all need. It's like, talk about, it's so powerful. I've experienced some of that myself, and it's so powerful that it'll feel at the moment like, oh, this will change things forever. And it's like, and this is where practice comes in, because it won't. It's like you will forget. This is that thing I talked about earlier. It's like, it's okay. That's part of being human. When you get a reframe like that, when you get that deal, like I had the same thing when my wife was in ICU, when we didn't have like a Dr. House mystery kind of thing. Nobody knew what was wrong with her. And I spent a week, terrified that I was never going to, see her again, is I remembered a friend of mine had actually same thing. She said if Dee Dee weren't here several years later, another thing about my control stuff, said, how would I know it if I came into your house? I go, everything would be put up and everything would be where it goes. That saddle wouldn't be sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. It is a part of my daily practice. It's a part of my reminders of myself. Once we learn something, we got to keep reminding ourselves and reminding each other. It changes everything.
Yep, really does.
But the idea of being able to get the broader view is actually to smile when something is out of place and look and go, oh, I'm remembering this. This is because I love my wife. My wife is here, and it's like, yeah, if you got a narrow view and you're focused on your day, it's about not shaming, anybody. It's like the idea. So before the guy comes home and he just sees more work. I get that because I've had that experience. We all have. You work all day and you come home and you see more work that you're going to have to do. It's like, okay, well, all Alan's saying at that point is just don't stop your perception at that point. Go ahead and keep, pan back a little bit, see the bigger picture. Yep. Think of the other ways of looking at this. That's personal responsibility. That's the idea of not just, we always talk about first voice, second voice. It's like, it's just not taking that first voice that says, damn these toys. What's the next thing that comes out? Well, the next thing can come out. Oh, I can remember having that conversation with Dr. Berger that day. It reminds me to be grateful that my kids and my family are safe today. It's like, beautiful. I'll go with that one. We make a choice.
So look, we get to this flexibility that we're talking about at a cognitive level and at an emotional level by first owning our rigidity and by taking responsibility for where we are. It's that we own it. We have to own it. Or what I like to say is you have to name it to tame it. Mm-hmm. You got to name it to tame it, baby. And if you're rigid, you got to name it. You got to say, God, I'm rigid. I just want all these things my way. And the minute you say that, you open up the possibilities of things not being your way. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you asked us to get more practical. Did we address that today, Patrick? Are you satisfied with this, or?
Yeah, I think you did, and I liked what Tom was saying earlier about feeling good while you're feeling bad, or not just being so fixated on
because the flexibility there.
Right.
We go again, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's where my sights are set these days because I'm still struggling to fit the container of my new life, but I recognize that the struggle is part of it, and I'm playing the long game, I think.
Well, and that's Alan's book. That's the whole essence of what we're talking about here, which is it's all about the literal meaning of responsibility, the ability to respond, and the idea that it's measure yourself at the end of the day by how you have responded to what has happened. Learn from where you fell short, or if you think you fell short. Right. If you're uncertain, check with somebody else, kind of get some feedback. But don't forget, we do learn from how we screw things up. But we also learn. This is a really important one. We learn from how we do things right. And the truth is, even when we're struggling at the beginning of anything, we're going to do it right sometimes. And whenever you do something right, you want to pay attention to that, not assume it's just a fluke. And that negative voice in our head will try to get rid of that and just say, that this too shall pass. It's like, no, I did something right. And that's, if you're teaching me how to play the piano and I finally get something right, what you're going to do is say, that's it. There it is. Repeat it. Do that over and over and over and over again. And even though I'm going to miss it sometimes, now I have something to repeat that's positive. So sometimes for some of us who've been the control freak, I'll speak for myself, just my self-respect at the end of the day can be based on nothing more than I kept my mouth shut. Yeah. And I understood why I was keeping my mouth shut. Not just to keep the peace, but I understood that was not the thing to do. I didn't need to explain anything about how to put peanut butter tops on jars to anybody. Yeah. And that may seem trite to somebody who doesn't have these issues, but it's like, sometimes that was a big deal.
Right on.
Still can be.
All right. So what are we doing next time, Patrick?
Let's see. It's actually discovering novel solutions. So I think,
Well,
you
there
know,
we go.
Oh.
We've given an introduction to that. And
I love that.
have more of that.
yeah.
Good job. All right, you guys.
Yes.
I'll see you then.
All right. Peace out, guys.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.